Hey everybody, welcome to the Herd Fit Podcast with Dr. Sam Rhee and myself, Coach David Syvertsen. This podcast is aimed at helping anyone and everyone looking to enhance their healthy lifestyle through fitness, nutrition, and most importantly, mindset. All right, guys, today's episode is how to be coachable. I have Dr. and Coach Sam Rhee on my right, Coach Adam Ramsden, our guest on our left. This is probably one thing that I think everybody could get a lot out of, whether you're brand new to CrossFit or you've been with us since 2004. I check myself on this all the time. I pay my own coach. I have a personal coach right now as well. And I've done a poor job being coachable over the past few months. He ripped into me for that. But, and my excuse there, and it's not a real excuse, it's my own fault, is I've been the coach for so long. And I haven't had a coach for so long. And I think I'm so used to just controlling, where when you're not coaching, you have to relinquish some control and just be the foot soldier that says, yo, do this. And not do this, but I'm going to put my spin on that or put my spin on that. I want to make sure that we're on the same page, all of us, the three of us included, because we're both coaches and athletes that get coached, that we can all work on this. And I think that and we have a high level of experience between the three of us. This applies to us, but it also applies to people that just started here at Bison or started at your own gym anytime recently. I think the way we're going to do to start this off is transparency, communication is rule number one, rule number two that cannot be negotiated. You have to be transparent with two things mainly, all right? What is your goal? Be honest about it. Don't be embarrassed by it. I've been embarrassed by goals before because sometimes when I say embarrassed is you don't want to give a goal that you might not get to. And I think a lot of people don't put their goals out there because they don't want anyone to know that they failed. And I try to be as transparent with anyone that will listen that I haven't hit my goal as a competitor yet, and I'm still going for it. But I'm not embarrassed if I don't get there. That's part of being humble, right? Is you don't be embarrassed. The next part about this is being transparent with what your lifestyle is. And I think this is where a lot of people are not honest with things. And it can go into their self-talk, confidence levels. It could do with their nutrition, their sleep. They don't actually convey what they tell themselves, what they think throughout a day. And I've talked to nutrition coaches, a couple of which we're going to hope to have on the Herd Fit podcast. That's the biggest struggle, is that people lie about what they're eating, what they're not eating.
Well, sometimes they're lying to themselves.
Yes, right. Yep. Pathological liars, right?
I mean, it's hard sometimes to admit to yourself that you're not really doing what you think you're doing.
100%. And again, we're big on uplifting people. We don't want to beat people down. But I just think that those are the two things, and I'd love to get both of your thoughts on this, is transparency of what your goal is and transparency of what your lifestyle actually is. Be objective as possible.
Sometimes it's okay to not know the answer and just tell your coach.
And say, I don't
know.
Yeah.
I don't know what I want to do. I know vaguely maybe this, but that's maybe what your coach is going to help you with is be like, okay, so wait, you want to be fitter, but like how?
One of the truest signs of humility, which everyone needs, is the ability to say, I don't know. And I think it's almost like a personal insult to some that they don't know. I think that's actually a good answer because it can spur some really good conversation.
Yeah, I think being honest with yourself is important because it's going to give you an avenue to make those improvements. If you are lying to yourself, if you're saying, oh, no, I ate clean last week, I wonder why I wasn't doing well in the gym, it must have been I wasn't coached very well or the warm-up. Is that really? We can talk a million things. A lot of people, when they get it, and I'm guilty of this too, when I'm in class and I'm next to a friend, I'm not putting all of my thought into the warm-up. I'm not really working on mobilizing what I need to mobilize to get ready for the workout because we're having a conversation. And sometimes I'll miss what the coach has said about something. It happened just the other day, and we were just in a side conversation. And so when I walk away from that workout, it's on me that I didn't do what I was supposed to do. So you have to be honest with yourself in that and be honest with whoever you're talking about or communicating your goals to, about what your goals are and how you're going to get there and what you're willing to sacrifice, as we said before, to get there.
It's hard to be honest with yourself.
Yep.
It's when you feel like this is what you're capable of and this is who you are, and then to tell someone, especially a coach, this is really not, because you have a self-image, you have an ego, you have who you think you want to be, and to try to be humble and honest with yourself, that's probably one of the hardest things to do.
Yep.
But you're right, it's very critical if you're going to actually ask someone to help you to get better, especially as an athlete.
Yeah. And just to build off of what both of you guys said, when it comes to the communication with the coach, that we're talking about how to be coachable, how to be honest. What Adam said is really important, is be realistic, right? If someone comes in here and says, like I've heard this over the years, it's like someone that started CrossFit last year, hey, I want to make the CrossFit Games one day. That's a very typical goal of someone that has a competitive background and they're pretty good at a few things. How realistic is that? It's not necessarily up to the coach to determine, but the athlete needs to know, all right, where are you in relation to that goal right now? All right, and how far away are you from that goal right now? And now, like he said, now there's an avenue of what needs to be done to get to that goal, right? It might not be a year's worth of work. It might be 5. And now you start talking about, no, not in those 5 years, not 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. Oh, I had some friends, I had some fun with my friends the other night, or I can't sleep these next couple months, or I have 3 different jobs, blah, blah, blah. You have to be realistic with what you're trying to pursue. And I think a good coach can be really objective with you. And I think one thing that you have to be ready for is a hard truth answer that comes back to you. Because I think there's a big misperception of a coach is supposed to make me feel good. And yes, that is part of their job. Part of our job as coaches is we're here to build people up, but we also need to be honest and objective so that there isn't gray area. I always feel like a lot of the people's issues with, their self-outlook, their goals, is there's a lot of gray area. I want to be really fit, but I want to work out hard on Sunday mornings, but my friends go out every Saturday night. I want to get drunk with them and have a great time. That's fine. You can't do both. That kind of thing. Where I think that a coach can tell you that, where your friend might not. A friend will tell you, you need balance in your life. Let's go out and get drunk and then we'll work out tomorrow. Or let's go out and have this unhealthy meal and let's work out tomorrow. I think that's where the disconnect between coach-athlete relationship comes in, is they're not your friend. And they can be your friend outside these walls. But I know when you guys come here and work out, I don't care about friendship at all. And that took me a long time to develop. Yes, we'll talk, I'll make fun of the Jets with him or something like that. But when we are coaching in a class, when the class starts, Adam's an athlete. That he's here to try and get better, and it's part of my job to help him get better. What is better, that's up to him and his goal and what he's communicated to me in the past. But so when I coach him, I'm no longer looking at a friend. And same with you. And I think that's a skill that a coach will develop over time, but the athlete needs to develop that too.
I think one of the best things I love about our coaches is when you see coaches taking classes, they're athletes.
Yeah.
They don't sit there and act coachy in any way, shape, or form. Right. Every single coach I've seen taking a class, just another athlete, taking the class, maybe talking to Liz, but usually listening to whatever, to following whatever it is. And I think that if you watched any coach taking a class here, you would realize it doesn't matter if you're a coach or who you are. It's just
there's no status there.
There's nothing there.
Yeah. And as an athlete, if you're coming in and you're saying, oh, why I asked Dave a question, why was he concentrated on the class? I like to think of it as a lifeguard analogy. So when I lifeguarded, was working with all my friends, but when you're up there and you're lifeguarding and your job is everybody's lives in the water, you can't be focused on other things. You got to be concentrating on here. And that's what I think our coaches do really well, is that when it's time for the class to work out, they're in that 100. So you have to, as an athlete, be able to say, okay, I'll catch up with them after, or stuff like that. Because you don't want to get, Sam didn't talk to me while he was watching the workout. Why doesn't he like me? What's going on there? We just have to be able to make that disconnect of, it's two different people. It's when we're coaching, we're a coach. Then we'll get back to what it is when we're not working.
And I think one of the things I want to say is that coaches are not perfect. And this is as much directed to how we as coaches can be better in terms of helping people be coachable. Because remember, there's that old saying, there are no bad students, only bad teachers. There are no bad athletes, only bad coaches.
No bad kids, only bad parents.
Yeah, there are bad kids. But I will say this, there is as much of a responsibility for the coach to help athletes be coachable. like you said, the athletes got to take their own responsibility. This is as much directed to us as coaches, saying, how do we facilitate coachability?
How do we facilitate coachability?
Before we move on to that, I want us just to think about that as like a thread that goes through this.
Yeah.
Because every time I hear, how can an athlete be more coachable, I also think, what's the coach's role in that as well?
Okay.
But the first thing I wanted to say is, so you wrote in our prep, the value of a coach who cares. So
truly cares.
Yeah. Okay. So talk to me about a coach that truly cares.
So I can, every single coach on our staff, there's 12 of us, right? I've had individual, not group, but also group conversations with every individual coach about a member in the gym. Like breaking down videos of their squat, of their muscle up, of their mindset, of what's going on in their personal life. That's how it's going to impact them. We don't need to do that. We should, but we don't need to. We talk about, we have a lot of new people at the gym right now. So we're doing all these write-ups on our new people in our private staff page. And Adam knows when this kid comes, his name's Jeremy, like I know what his strengths and weaknesses are. I know that there's a little issue with his neck that he probably shouldn't do any overhead squats, right? That is a sign of, we truly do care about people's fit. And this is not a pump up bison thing. This is, what does a coach do that truly cares? We communicate with each other about the people we're serving. And I also think we all view our jobs as we're serving people. We're not in charge of people. We're here to help people. We're not here to like direct traffic, even though it does look like that sometimes. Like we're telling you what zone to go into. Saturdays, it's mayhem here. It's like, bop, you're there, bop, bop. It looks like that's why we're here. We're here, we do this stuff on Saturdays. We pick the partners on Saturdays so that people have a good experience. You know, don't care about friends. Don't care about your comfort level. We're trying to like maximize the benefit, the value of your hour here. So sometimes the athlete won't see that. If the coach does not truly care, it's like, all right, who's in my class? All right, yeah, go wherever you want. Here's the warm up. Here's the workout. Best time of the day so far is 10 minutes. Good luck, guys. I remember using that story. So it's like they're one of the most prominent gyms in this country. If you saw the name on a coach's shirt, you'd be like, whoa, that person coaches there. And I said this story in a past podcast before, but we had one of our members went to that gym, took a class from a celebrity athlete coach that has a lot of Instagram followers, because that's the marking of a good coach now, is literally did not introduce the person, didn't ask the person what their experience level was, if they have any injuries, gave the warm-up, gave the workout, ate lunch while they warmed up, and while they worked out.
Why are you ripping on Boynton Beach for it?
Yeah, one thing I wrote down and Sam, you and I have had this conversation of what does it take to be a good coach? And I think that's important for anybody to know. If you're going to help other people in whatever endeavor it is, it's that you care more about that person's success than your own. So every bad coach I've had, I've dropped in at a couple CrossFits that weren't where the experience was not as good. It's because they were on their phone. They were worrying about their own programming. They were working out while doing a different workout than the class was while we were working out. If you're going to prioritize your own progress over the people you're working with, that's fine. But I don't think you're going to be a successful coach. And you're not going to truly care about the success of the people around you.
I'd say that this quality is the most important quality for a coach. Not ability, not experience, and it holds for other professions too. And I'm sure if you're in education, if you're in medicine, I see surgeons or doctors all the time, they're not the most experienced, but if they really care about a patient or a student, like they'll find a way to really help that person. I've known very experienced, very skilled people, but if they really didn't care, I wouldn't want them taking care of me. If they really, it doesn't matter all the knowledge in the world, if they really don't have a vested interest in you, then they really should quit their profession right there.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel very strongly about that. And I also feel as a coach, you should always care because that's your responsibility. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to make these athletes better whatever way you can. And I know Ben Bergeron has all this stuff about what good coaches are and blah, 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 blah. The first thing is really the caring part.
Yeah, that's the baseline.
I think once you get the caring part, it leads to you wanting to know more about your athletes. It leads to wanting to know more about the progressions of how you're going to get through or help them to get through certain movements. So all of a sudden, that translates to what you're doing outside of the gym in preparation for that hour you're going to coach that athlete. And
the amount of times you guys have sent me things that you've come across, whether it's on the internet, in a book, conversation with someone, hey, like the amount of stuff that you sent me about like pistols or strict muscle ups, or the stuff that you sent me with like lifting that can be applied to other people. Like, you guys are spending your free time trying to enrich your mind in relation to CrossFit so that you can help other people. It wasn't for you. And that's, again, you're sacrificing your personal time for other people here. And honestly, like, they never know about it. And that's not why you do things. You don't do things so that you can get a thank you from someone. You do things because you're genuinely here to try and help. And there's a lot that you'll do to help them that people will never know about.
So if I'm an athlete and I have a coach and they're telling me anything, how can I be receptive to that feedback? How are we in general? That's just a universal thing. How are we as people receptive to feedback? How do I take feedback? How do you take feedback? Me personally, I've always been in a pretty hierarchical job. Like, you've always had people senior to you.
Yep.
So I'm very used to taking orders, like from senior surgeons or whatever other people. Like, from a coachability standpoint, I would say I'm fairly coachable only because I'm just pretty used to taking orders. The problem is not always thinking about those orders. So maybe I'm always leaning almost to just doing whatever it is someone's telling me to a fault. How do you, as an athlete, incorporate feedback? I know you just talked about your coach.
Yeah.
And how you took his feedback.
Yeah, it's a lot of the times you don't pay attention to your feedback or the actual coaching until something went wrong, performed really badly over the course of whatever. And that's when, like, you start going, like, why did this happen? I'm big on, like, why did this go wrong? What happened? You break this down, you break that down. And that's when you start to really, you have the conversation with the coach, and the coach at that moment, it's best case scenario if that coach is really honest with you. And you can take the feedback from him about what you did as an athlete and say, all right, he sounds harsh right now, but he's being real. And this is like, I think everyone needs to turn off the sensitivity switch. And I say that with caution because I know that everyone ticks differently. And some people respond very well to positive reinforcement. Other people respond well to objective remarks, whether they're positive or negative. But I think the athlete's responsibility in that situation is, if you trust your coach, do not evaluate how nice or how mean they're being in that moment. Because I think sometimes that coach is saying things a certain way or with a certain tone or with a certain choice of words that, I don't want to say it's over your head, but they're thinking big picture, where I think sometimes the athlete is only thinking about this. Like, my thought was, this workout went so wrong and I thought I was going to crush it. What happened? Where he's thinking bigger picture. He's like, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. We talked about this 2 months ago, you haven't done a thing. And I think that's times where it's like, all right, this is where I need to be the athlete, not the coach, and stop putting your own spin on things. I think we all do this. We put our spin on a coach's remark. Why can't we just take the objective remark from the coach and just go?
And you have to realize that you could get the same exact feedback from me and Kayla, and it's going to come out and be received in two totally different ways.
I was thinking the same thing.
Because I'm very, take the emotions out of it.
Yes.
Like, I'm going to give you that objective feedback.
Yep.
And I think we're saying the same things and we're coming from the same place of caring.
Yep.
It's just going to come out in two totally different ways. So you have to be receptive of that and just try and strip everything away from what the information that the coach is giving.
It's hard, and that's why you're exactly right. You're exactly right that you have to strip the emotion and take the objective, appreciate the honesty.
Yep.
But that's also why so many times people are like, as coaches, it's a little frustrating because you're like, I told them this, like, how many times? And then they went to someone else and they said the same thing to them.
We talk about this with coaching our wives. Oh, yeah. It's like the amount of things that Ash will come home from class like, Adam told me to do this, and Adam told me to do that. I'm like, I would tell you to do that for 3 years. But let's be honest about this. There are athletes that are going to respond to certain types of coaching better. And you have to not get offended by that. There are people that respond to Tafaro's music and his laid-back style. I am not that, but they like that better and they learn better from him. Where Ash will say, Dave, like, you haven't helped me with this and Adam just helped me like that. A coach can't get offended by that. Right. I think that's a big thing. We're only talking about athletes here. Coaches need to know, like, you know what? You ain't the best coach for it. If you think you're a good coach, good for you. You're not the best coach for everybody. There are people that prefer Liz's coaching style over yours and yours, not mine. But I'm just kidding. But but she has a way of taking over a room that makes it like more like positive and fun. And some people need that. Where other people, like some of us, I think when we coach, we're a little bit more, get this done, do it right, blah, blah, blah. Some people respond to that. They don't like the bubbly atmosphere. So I think coaches need to know you're not going to be the best voice for everybody.
We had a podcast about coaching styles, and I would say you can't change who you are as a coach, but you can also you can tailor it a little bit to the particular athlete. And I know you do 100%. Oftentimes is if it's this person, you're going to approach them this way, 100%. This person this way. And if I feel like I'm super dry, maybe I need to see how I can be a little more Liz-like in some situation as opposed to more Dave-like in other situations.
And I think that's where the communication between the coach and the athlete helps. I remember Evan P., who unfortunately moved away, but whenever I coached him, he would say after the class, oh, I like that coaching because Adam's going to... But I would only yell at him because he and I had this conversation and I was like, do you respond well to this type of motivation? I always tell my classes that if somebody comes and it doesn't matter if you get in my ear or slap me upside the head, like, I'm not going to move any faster. That's just, it's just, I don't respond to that type of coaching. It doesn't mean that it's good. It's not good coaching. Yep. And it's not that the cheerleader way of coaching is the wrong way to coach. It's just, that's personally not something I respond to. Whereas if it's just stop me mid-workout and say, this is what you need to do, and I'll respond better to that. But that communication happening we can learn that from an athlete by observing them over a long period of time, but I think we can fast track that by having that conversation.
So one of the things I did read was that to be coachable, obviously, you should never stop learning. But as an athlete, I know there are certain things that I do that I'm like, I'm really good at this. I don't need to take advice about this. I'm good.
Can you filter things?
Yeah. So how do you get to athletes who are like, you know what, like you said, I've always done it this way. I'm not going to change this.
More for like stubborn athletes or more like, hey, they're experienced, they don't need help on this subject?
I don't know. It can be a couple different things. Or they're just resigned to, you know what, I've never really been able to do this. Maybe I'm just not built for that, and I'm not going to do it.
I do think coaches need to know that they don't have all the answers for everybody. So if you do go to an athlete and say, hey, do it this way, do it that way, it might not work. And especially if there's someone that already moves well, right? There's a couple people here that I'm trying to change their squat a little bit, foot position, with how wide their feet are. But if it doesn't pan out, it's not that they're being stubborn, right? Like sometimes, like you can't coach an athlete the same way. You can't coach every athlete the same way. So I think a coach needs to know that there isn't one way to do everything. And I think that's more mechanical what I'm talking about. If you're talking about a personality issue, like there are some ego issues with some athletes where they're not going to do the full range of motion. They just want to go fast, get a good time, go home.
Well, I'm glad you have athletes that can actually say, you know what, I've always squatted this way, I'm good at it.
Right.
And then you're like, okay, let me just open up your feet a little bit. That they're like, okay, I'm going to try that.
Right.
Let's do it.
Be coachable.
And never stop trying to do things that even they feel like they're really good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's we said before, it's a constant process, and we don't have an end goal. And even though you might say, oh, I'm really good about how I back squat, I shouldn't be worried about that. Like just getting that outside perspective, just those little tweaks can, help or over the course of time.
This comes back to something we originally talked about is this is a two-way street. And I think here at Bison, your coaches, like we're talking to each other all the time. We're doing our own research on our own all the time because we're always trying to enrich ourselves as well. If the athlete does that as well, that's when you start seeing some significant gains from that relationship, right? If the athlete's the only one doing the research and the coach isn't, or the coach is the only one doing the research and the athlete isn't, that's where I think these results are very limited in terms of what and who can benefit.
Yeah, and that's what I read was they termed it, giving the athlete ownership. So it's like when the coach gives you advice, you take that advice, but you're also using it. So it's not just, okay, put your feet a little bit wider.
Yeah.
You do that and you're like, okay, you know what? It also makes me feel this way. What do you think about this?
Yep.
And then the coach is, okay, then let's do this. And then you're like, okay, that is helping here, but how about this? And so that's the kind of thing that the athlete has to take upon themselves, is when they take that advice, like you said, they're going home, they're working with it, some thought into it. They're also giving feedback back to the coach saying, this is what it feels like for me, instead of just trying and be like, didn't really work, so that sucks. Yep. Do you ever feel like you have to give your athletes a break in terms of coaching?
Yeah.
So how do you know when, because coachability, you can only be so coachable for so long.
So I think this is part of the reason why we started hiring coaches. It wasn't just, we need to take a load off our shoulders. It was, I actually remember saying, I was like, I think people will benefit less if I'm coaching 35 classes a week. It's the same person. Like, imagine you came here and you were coached by the same person every time. Even if you like that person, that coach has a bias. All right, they have a certain way of doing things. That's why when I work out with the class here, I always try to get to a different coach's class, because it wakes up a different perspective of CrossFit or of certain movements. And I think that if you have the same voice all the time, it actually could be a detriment, because as good as that coach might be, he or she is still limited, in my opinion. And I think that if you have in a gym like this, where you have so many different coaches, you have different backgrounds, different styles, in most cases, you're going to be able to see different people. That's why we've rotated the schedule over the years, where you have basically a different coach for the most part, not every day, but like at a certain time, if you come every day, you're going to have a different coach almost every day, or every other day, I should say. And I think that's where, hey, should you stop coaching someone? If I have a one-on-one person, like, that's a little bit of a different situation, but usually that has a very specific goal in mind, where you can coach the person all year, but you coach them differently throughout the year. Where there's certain times where as competition gets close, like, I'm a little bit more like, be on top of that person, where it's like right now you're in off season right now. It's like, all right, get this done. If you skip that one, or if you have to dial it back because something doesn't feel right, or you have some other personal things, it's not going to be like, hey, like, why didn't you do that? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think we need to avoid saying, if my cue to you is always get your elbows through and bring your elbows up on your cleans, and they don't get there, we have to realize that it's an intense situation. Maybe the way we're saying it is not clicking, and so you can't get frustrated with, why aren't they getting their elbows through? It's like, we have to be patient, but then the athletes also have to be patient of understanding what the coach is trying to tell them and really putting it into focus, rather than just saying, I'm chasing a good score, like we talked about before.
It's hard as coaches, especially now with all the new people, because there's so much time suck with working on technique. As coaches, what is your strategy for a class? Do you try to give everyone advice? Do you just give some people advice sometimes? Like, I know, and that's skewed because it's always about me. So they're always like, that coach never gives me any advice.
Yeah, right.
Or this coach only gives advice to that person.
Yeah.
And when I objectively look at it, I don't necessarily think that's the case, at least not consistently. I'm not sure. I would say that the kinds of advice that, for example, I'll see you give Ryan Ratcliffe is certainly different than the newbie at 6 a.m. You're talking about pacing and like what time that Ryan
splits.
Fairly high level sort of stuff, because Ryan, will benefit.
Mechanically is there.
Right.
His consistency is there.
Right.
Now it's about intensity. That's what he talked about previously. Mechanics, consistency.
So what do you try to do in terms of giving coaching for a particular class?
You always start macro, so like the whole class has to be on the same page with what the workout is, what needs to be scaled, what's the stimulus, what can you change to achieve that stimulus. And then you do like your group warm up, your group stretch, your group technique work. Like, I like to have a focus of the day on every movement, right? There's 10 things you could focus on every movement. You can't get to them all, right? And then once that kind of breaks up, where you're like, hey guys, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, workout, blah, blah, you can gravitate towards people that, like, during that macro level session, you start taking the scope of the room of, all right, who seems like they're a little uncomfortable right now? Who's not getting it? Who's not clicking? And then you go to that person and athlete coach, athlete 50%, coach 50%. You come in like, all right, this is what you need to work on today with this lift. All right, so you gave this person this like micro level attention, but now it's on the athlete to take it in, not just be like, God, yeah, let's take it in. What are you now going to do with this information that the coach just gave me? That I need to like keep my knuckles down when I'm lifting. I need to not hitch. Like what the coach gives a suggestion, whether it's good or bad, are you trying to use it to help yourself out? And then throughout the class, like I've always made an effort, like every class, everyone gets like a significant look. If it's a 3-minute workout, it's a little different. You have 20 people here. But over the course of most of our workouts, they average from 12 to 18 minutes, usually in that range. You can get to everyone at a certain point. Whether it's a tip, some people don't respond well to tips in the middle of a workout. It could just be some support, cheerleader type. But I do think it's important for the coach to know in every class, it's your job to get to everyone during that class.
Yeah, I know when you come around to me because I'm like, all right, am I squatting to death?
Yeah.
Okay, now he's gone. All right, no problem. Woo. All right, I'm good.
Yeah, I try to check in with every athlete during the class. When it's people that are more comfortable with the movements, almost it takes more time and more time spent with them to find that one little thing that you could tweak, that you can give to them. With your more experienced athletes, once they hear that cue, they're more likely to put it into practice.
Right.
Whereas a new person or somebody that struggles with a movement might need more check-ins.
Right.
Say, okay, make sure you keeping your elbows in or anything like that.
And then also, like you have to, as a coach in real time, differentiate between there's a safety cue you need to give someone, like, hey, you're about to get hurt if you keep doing this, or more of like a mechanical efficiency cue. Right? If someone is doing toes to bar and you can tell that they're not pulling the bar down, they're not getting this arm angle, they're just kind of like wrapping their legs around, touching the bar, that's like a mechanical, okay, that person's not going to get hurt. I'll go give them a quick cue and then I'll leave to the next person. But if that person is at the deadlift and they keep rounding their back and they're not bending their knees at all and they're only lifting, using their back to lift the barbell, you got to go there and stop them and be like, yo, get your breath back. Let's talk for about 30 seconds. Yes, I know you're in the middle of a workout. We got to correct this. So that's where it's such an individual case-by-case, class-by-class basis at that point.
I think some of it is also incumbent on the athlete. So as me, depending on how I'm feeling that day, I'm going to scale or I'm going to do something slightly different. And I know the coaches will notice if my shoulder is a little wonky, they'll notice. And more often than not, the coach is like, is everything good with you? And I'm like, yeah, it's just this. And then they're like, okay. Yeah. And they're just checking in.
You can self-regulate a little bit.
Yeah. So I think the coaches have a good touch most of the time about figuring out who's where and what needs most. And I think if you're a pretty experienced athlete and you've been here for a while, don't expect, that you're going to get like a personalized trainer like for that session.
It's tough.
You know,
it's okay for you to say, hey, Sam, can you keep an eye on just for an individual movement?
Yes.
And say, oh, can you make sure like anything on shoulder to overhead? Can you see if you notice like me not getting my head through or anything like that?
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I love the athletes that do that because they're meeting you more like halfway basically. They have a concern. They want you to make sure you're checking it out and making sure that you're good with that. So.
And that goes back to coachability of being able to say, okay, I want to improve. My coach wants me to improve. Let's work on this together. It's not just, okay, coach me.
Don't look at me, but then, how am I doing?
Yeah, don't put me on Instagram.
The last thing I almost forgot before I forgot is to be coachable, you should also have a positive attitude, right? You need fun. Like, it's not all so serious.
That happens a lot here with myself and you guys, and it's taken too serious sometimes. And that impacts how coachable you are. Because if you're high-strung and you're stressed out, the coach is no longer trying to help you out and your position's out. They're like, all right.
I got to calm her down.
Yeah, I got to calm this person down. And I need to make sure there's nothing going on in your personal life. There's a time and place for those kind of discussions. It's not the middle of a workout. Right. All right? And I think we all can do a better job of controlling our emotions. I can't help it. That's a weak statement. You can't help it. And I think that one thing we could all do is separate your life from the 15 to 20 minutes you're here to work out. Because this can act as an escape for a lot of people. But if you let all these outside things come in and impact the workout, what is a coach supposed to do there? Especially most people who come here, I don't know their personal lives that well. So, and neither do you guys. So how can you help that out in addition to the mechanical stuff or the pacing stuff or the safety stuff? I think it could be the athlete's responsibility to know that no matter what, you're in here to do that workout for that hour. All right? Not that we don't care. but we don't care about what's going on because we need to help you out. We need to focus on the workout, not what's going on outside.
You don't have to be sunshine,
right.
but having a positive attitude goes a long way for anyone interacting with you. Like, if
Absolutely.
you're enjoying it,
Yep.
they're going to enjoy working with you.
Absolutely.
And as a coach, that makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Herd Fit podcast. Be on the lookout for next week's episode.